And so, I'm reviewing all the important films of 2021. That's not my personal estimation, by the way. That's just my codified term for Oscar nominees. I'm trying to be cute, you see. It might work for some people, certainly works for me. Anyway, I'll be throwing one or two of these out every couple of days. Today, it's The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Michael Showalter's adaptation of the documentary with the same title. Jessica Chastain stars in the title role, and she's joined by Andrew Garfield as Jim Baker. The movie covers a subject that will probably be very familiar to a lot of people, but is it worth seeing? Stick around and find out. Up front, it has to be said this movie turns out to be a lot more fun than you might expect it to be, but maybe the fact it was made by comic filmmaker Michael Showalter should be enough of an indicator that this will more likely be a kind of human comedy rather than any sort of hard-hitting exposé. And then it follows that how much you enjoy or get out of it will depend on how compelled you are by its subject and how much information you want. There is certainly the material here for a very probing, dramatic film that looks deeply into some very provocative political issues, and if we're being 100% honest, that might ultimately be the more interesting film. But although this movie does touch on some of these issues, it does so very superficially, because its chief focus is the title character, one of the most singular and flamboyant public figures to grace American pop culture in the last 50 years, for sure. And so here she is, impeccably impersonated by Jessica Chastain. This is something that will astound you from the very first frame of the film, and you will remain transfixed. Yes, they have piled on the makeup and prosthetics on Chastain's face to the point she resembles a Cenobite from one of the Hellraiser movies, so she definitely looks like Tammy Faye. But it's more than that. The voice, the physicality, it is a truly impressive thing to behold. As of this writing, there have been 3 high-profile biopics of famous women that have been garnering critical acclaim and awards attention, and I can say with absolute certainty that this is probably the best of them, at least purely in terms of portrayal. Chastain's colleagues have evoked their subjects in their respective films. Chastain simply becomes her subject, and if that is something you want to see for yourself, it alone makes the movie worth watching. It's worth watching in general because it's an entertaining picture, but it has to be said that in terms of information, enlightenment, or basically anything else you'd want to get from a serious dramatic observation, you'd probably be better served watching the documentary this film was based on. Because what you get here is only a few steps above an SNL skit reenacting these same events. And again, I do think some of the comedic slant was definitely intended, but it's worth highlighting that the film does not necessarily mock its subjects, at least not Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. Well, maybe Jim Baker is mocked a little, but that's because the nature of events make him, and by extension the entire religious complex that he served, the de facto villain of the piece. But basically, even with tongue slightly in cheek, the movie actually has a level of compassion for Tammy Faye. Everything about her seemed to exist on this hyper-real plane in the way she presented herself publicly, but the film argues this is simply who she was. And however wonky some of the things she did or became involved in, her heart was generally in the right place. She was a genuinely good-natured, kind person trapped behind this flamboyant cartoon, serving a deeply corrupt master. You get some of that by watching this film, and apart from Chastain's eye-popping transformation, Cherry Jones is wonderful as her mother. And then you have Vincent D'Onofrio in the role of Jerry Falwell, and it's interesting that he basically plays Falwell in the same manner and intensity that he plays the comic book villain Kingpin on the Marvel Daredevil TV series. It's interesting and it's appropriate given who he's playing. But again, apart from some bit of fun, you don't really get much in the way of revelatory information about any of these religious organizations that Tammy Faye and Jim Baker became involved in. So again, you're watching this for its entertainment value and for its performances. And before I go, I do have to highlight that as good as Chastain is in the title role, Andrew Garfield is every bit as good in the role of Jim Baker. And for this role, the uncanny resemblance to Anthony Perkins is quite appropriate because Jim Baker is very much Norman Bates, and I think Garfield is aware of this because he certainly plays it up. But in any case, he is terrific. It really looks like 2021 is the year of Garfield, like it's time to start paying attention to this extremely talented, charismatic actor and throwing him tons of terrific parts. He appeared in the biggest blockbuster of the year and stole the show, he's headliner in another high-profile biopic in which he basically is the show, and then he's got this juicy supporting role here, next to a powerhouse actress, where he manages to hold his own and be equally magnetic and captivating. If you're watching this a year or two from now, and Andrew Garfield already has an Oscar, then be sure it was well deserved. So that's that, basically. A fun, albeit slight, character study with some terrific performances. That's this movie. If the documentary didn't already exist, maybe I'd take it down a notch for being so fluffy and lacking in real bite, or frankly, informational content. But with things as they are, I suppose this is a perfectly acceptable companion piece. Hey, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please give me a like, and subscribe to my channel, and share the video. There's going to be some cool stuff coming to the channel, so you're going to want to keep track of it, and I hope you like all that stuff too. See ya.